Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel, Life-Changing Stories. I am so thrilled to be interviewing Adam Botha today. Adam is a chief executive optimist. Now, I love that. He is the CEO at Your Mindful Coach. He helps CEOs and people, the individuals, achieve balance and success through mindful coaching, tailored retreats, and spiritual support. Wow. Adam, tell us a little bit about that. Hi.
Hi, Michael. Thank you. Thank you for that. So I have realized that people in very high pressure situations on a day-to-day basis are needing more than just leadership coaching or training. They're actually needing a way of being that can help them resource more from within themselves to be more, let me say, grounded
Yeah.
day to day, but also just to help them manage their energy. And my approach as a coach and a guide and potentially a mentor is mindfulness. So coming at this problem from a mindfulness space,
Mm-hmm.
um, and using, and I'm not ashamed to say, spiritual tools, spiritual context within which CEOs can just find a calm center space within the chaos that they have to deal with every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's quite a challenging situation because a lot of, especially corporate companies, they shy away from the, let's say, the more esoteric side
Mm.
of things, and they like things very practical and just like day-to-day kind of solutions. How do you bridge that gap?
So for me, it's about, well, what works, what I found works well, Michael, is you know, offering an experience
Hmm.
so that they get a sense of what it's about. And this is now my retreats that I run.
Yeah.
But but then it's about integrating it, It's like going to a fantastic concert, music concert and rock concert and being hyped up. And then you come home and it just all the energy just leaves.
Yes.
And now we're back in a world that we don't feel excited about, we don't feel energized about. So I tend to be all about a grounded spiritual approach. What is your practice? Are you practicing every day? This, for obvious reasons, could be meditation. But it encompasses a lot more than that. But meditation, are you sitting every day, or are you writing every day, or what is your meditation? And so, because CEOs are putting out so much energy, I could frame it like that. They need to resource and retreat and recharge. And I tend to be all about, okay, so how are you going to do this? Where are you booking it in? When are you booking it in? For how long? And what are you doing in between? And also, what are you noticing? And then what are you, let me say, integrating from what you notice,
Yeah.
where it's not working, where it is working. Yeah. So it's
And
it's a complex process, but I tend to be all about the practice. Yeah. So as I
yes,
said before, not the woohoo, but the
yes.
ground approach.
The
Yeah.
grounded approach, yes. So even though the CEOs, leaders, even managers aren't doing physical work in the company, they are often the ones that are exerting the most energy. They're giving
Yes.
off the most energy. And if they don't balance that, then obviously there's going to be a problem with the company.
Yes.
How
Yes.
on these retreats, you obviously speak about this, how to manage that energy. You mentioned how to have a different way of being. Is this just like a Burning Man, and then we come home feeling great? What are
Yeah.
these retreats about?
Yeah, that would be the opposite of what I offer. But not without fun. I must say this, not without fun, not without a bit of creative play, not without perhaps using artistic sensibilities. So so what it's about is really um, offering a still space that they can experience.
Mm.
And there are group exercises. So this is what I find, to your point, Michael, with regard to if the CEO or leadership is losing energy, or we could say leaking energy to things that aren't healthy for the business, that has a top-down effect, definitely. And what I find very exciting is when a couple of CEOs get together.
Yeah.
So suddenly they get together, and I'm talking about, you know, I work with sometimes 5 CEOs at a time, sometimes groups of 10. I don't tend to go above that. So it's very personal. But what I find there is it has a ripple effect. And that ripple effect is quite dynamic, you know. Obviously, there needs to be a circle of trust developed and primed and prepared before. That's very important. Where we do the retreat is very important. Although I don't tend to go out of the city, I tend to kind of keep it in or surround or in the surrounds of urban environments.
Oh, that's
But
interesting.
yeah. So it's about the energy of the place that can hold us. But of course, I play a big role in setting up the energy, or setting up a strong intention for a healthy context, for growth, for transformation, for aha moments, for wows. And so when I set the space up, I always say 1 + 1 equals 3 in this case. So
Yes,
when CEOs come together, it's magic. It's a magic space. Yeah.
that's awesome. So obviously this is it's great work that you're doing. How did you get there? What's your story?
Oh,
What was
yeah.
changing
Good,
moment?
good question, Michael. Yeah. So my background is actually graphic design. I qualified as a designer in 1996. I look a bit younger than I am, so I've been around for a while in branding and design. But I then worked for three quite big branding and design agencies, worked on lovely small clients, but also the big, the big multinationals, so to speak. So I got a good experience of how to express my creativity and how to articulate and how to present well. Because to speak about your creative idea is very difficult, I think. And
Mm.
so trained in how to be clear in my thinking first, even though I was maybe very excited about the idea, could I present it in a very logical, practical way
Yeah.
um, that would make sense, that would make sense and blend with the client's story. So I think that's maybe one of the most valuable skills I learned in design and branding, is being able to articulate very clearly why I did what I did and how it would actually help them, and how it linked into the core values of their story, or helped them tell a transformed story. And so I could say I stepped away from working for a boss. My clients then became my boss in 2012. And I opened my own personal transformation business called I Walk Awake. But I also kept a branding business going on the side with my wife. So my wife and I also still run a marketing business on the side. And in a way, that keeps me grounded in what's happening in the space
Mm.
from a marketing perspective. But Michael, I've always been a seeker. So from the age of 18, no one really knew what Tai Chi was. What is Tai Chi? What's this martial art? What's this thing? And so I started doing that then. I started doing a lot of meditation, even when I was a little older, let me say 2 years on. But I began, let me say, accessing my inner space that became really quite profound for me. Suddenly, I was living in between worlds, if I could say that. I had access to a vast inner space,
Mhm.
and the outer world was still doing what it was doing. So, So I began to move between these spaces, you know. We do this when we sleep, by the way, of course. You know, we're awake and we're sleeping at night. What I found is that it was a bit of that, not sleeping, obviously, during the day. That's more about meditation. But the idea of meditation that I found so interesting was that you move in and out of I could say your inner world and your outer world, and there's an edge there that's quite magical. Yeah. So I've traveled and done so many retreats and pilgrimages and sabbaticals. I have done counseling courses and shamanic journeys uh, and journeys towards priesthood. So I've really pushed myself in a sense, just because I've been so hungry for it, from Eastern to Western religion and spiritual practices, that I then obviously see what is the person in front of me looking for, and would another perspective perhaps help them.
Yeah.
So yeah, so there's a lot. I could talk for hours.
Fantastic. Yes, yes, yes. You, I see you also have a happiness blueprint.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
What is that about? What is the secret to
Right.
happiness?
For sure, Michael. So happiness blueprint it's about, um, it's a process, it's a template that someone can use, after, obviously, after a personal one-on-one consultation, that looks at, firstly, measures the levels of happiness in various parts of their life.
Hmm.
So, you know, that interesting kind of word, work life, you know, with a little dash in between. Well, in between the dash, or on the dash, we could go into the dash. There are a lot of different spheres. And so a happiness blueprint is looking at, um, the different spheres in your life. And obviously they're not separate, but it helps to separate them out, measuring the happiness levels, looking at, firstly, what is happiness for you? How do
Mm.
you define happiness? Because
Okay.
it's in fact a very personal thing.
Hmm.
Um, and then how do we then change the things you want to change?
Mm.
What are those processes? And those processes then become very exciting for me, because now we're going to grounding the thing. What do I need to do here? What do I need to maybe experience a bit more of over there? So it's just a blueprint, it's a map that really does intend to raise the levels of happiness.
Mm.
And happiness not being a frivolous or superficial word, I kind of would probably reframe that as a lasting joy, a
Ah,
joy that a joy that I live within, that keeps me hopeful, keeps me excited, keeps me moving forward. Yeah.
I like that. Love it, love it, love it. So the outcome of your process is a way of being.
Yeah.
How would you describe that?
The word being, Michael, I think is the key word, is the key thing here, right? Because I like to say that the human being, in fact, human comes from, I love words and I love diving into the root meaning of words. So human actually comes from humus and manus. It means earth hands.
Mm.
But it's interesting that at the end of that word that's made up of two root words is being. And being is a way of it's an embodiment, actually. Whatever I'm focusing on, I do begin to become. And
Mm.
so that's a very helpful way to look at it, is what am I focusing on? What am I spending my time thinking about? Not even doing.
Yes.
What I spend my time thinking about and paying attention to starts showing up in my doing.
Yeah.
And so we're not human doings, we're human beings. But from that space of authentic being, I can now find deeper joy in what I'm doing, in how I am in my key relationships, and how I am as a leader in my business. And this is very important. So if I'm being that which I'm seeking most in the world, that's a bit of an interesting thing. then other people begin to feel that, and it has a rub-off effect. And I think, you know, this is why I'm trying to work more and more with CEOs, because they're at this, that they're at the peak, they're at the top of this pyramid or mountain that is requiring a level of being that is very conscious. So if we can begin to raise our conscious awareness of these things, then our being becomes, our way of being becomes more in a flow state as opposed to a stuck state. I'm looking forward to what could happen, as opposed to I can't believe that happened.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, and so it's very much about the present, a way
Yes,
of being
that
right
awareness.
now.
Yeah, staying in
Mm,
that awareness of now and being just active right here and go with that flow. And
yeah,
very
absolutely.
important thing you mentioned there was that shift that comes from the constant, oh, did this just happen? Did this just happen? To that place of like, wow, let's see what this moment brings. Let's see what that moment brings. Why did I meet this person? Where did I go there? Becomes exciting, eh? The journey becomes completely different when you're in that mindset.
It does, Michael. It does. Because the normal journey is, what did you do today? Oh, I woke up, I had breakfast, I was late, the kids were
Yeah,
screaming, I went to work, um, I had this meeting, I had that meeting, I signed on this new client, we lost this client. You know, it's very logical. And I
yeah.
tend to work in a more magical space. So if you reviewed your day and looked at, well, actually, how did it go? How did it go? Because you're in a calm space, and because you kind of are able now to look at the day from above, from a
Hmm.
more objective space, from an expanded awareness, more's going to show up, and you're going to be like, wow, my nugget was actually seeing the smile in that person's face, and I'd love to speak more to them, or I'd love to
Yeah,
have a meeting with them.
yeah.
It's in the little details, and it does become very exciting
Yeah,
because,
what do people refer to it now as those little glimmers?
yes,
You're looking for the glimmers, the magical space, you know, those little
yes,
moments. And when you
yes,
start to notice them more and more appear, it's wonderful
yeah,
how it works, isn't it?
yeah, because they begin to weave together. And so suddenly I have something a lot more solid to hold on to, even
Yeah.
under pressure. So now I'm more resourced as a person in a very high pressured situation. I don't lose my center. I don't lose my cool. I
Mm.
don't I don't let the maybe the unhappy or moody person in the room, you know, throw my game off. I'm able to keep a joy even in that high pressure situation, or around someone who's very unhappy. Yeah.
And I also find that what's really amazing when you're in that space is that when something goes what used to seem like wrong, because you're in that space, you handle it in such a different way that it then becomes a blessing. That something
Yes.
magical transforms from that, which is quite
Yes.
nice, eh?
I love what you're saying, Michael, because you speak about a level of a state of openness, a
Mm,
state of openness and awareness that um, this is not about me looking good or bad or being right or wrong. I'm
mm,
actually I'm just here,
yes.
witnessing, watching, looking, curious, interested. It's not an easy space for most people to hold. I know it's been thrown around a lot now, but I've met very few people who can sit in utter stillness and silence and just listen. Yeah, so it's a
Quite
special thing.
amazing. My neighbor does the art of living, and
Yes.
they're currently on a 3 day silence. And she always tells me whenever she goes on the silence, she does it about twice a year. I'm going on silence. If I don't answer my phone, you know why. And I'm like, wow, she sits in complete silence for 3 days in her apartment. And the level of peace when I see her after that is just absolutely remarkable. Truly, truly remarkable. And I try it for a day.
Yeah, good,
Yeah, it works.
good.
It works better when you're on a retreat, right?
Yes.
Because you can actually, yeah, you got a good solid reason to
Yeah.
withdraw. Do you have a lot of
Yeah.
silence on your retreats? Is that something that you
The silence, or I could say, the silence happens in the practices that we share.
yeah,
Yeah.
the
Yeah. So
meditation
it's not
and stuff like
right. So yeah. So it's not at all like your kind of I could say typical Buddhist silent retreat, or Zen retreat. But it is what I strive for. I mean, I'm not perfect and no one gets this right.
yeah,
And it maybe it's even about getting it right, but the spaces that are silent are hopefully experienced deeply, if I can say that.
mm,
So
mm,
interestingly enough, you spoke about a 3-day and you've tried it for a 1-day. What I'm very interested, Michael, in is how can one experience a quality over and above a quantity
yeah,
experience, if
mm,
I'm making sense.
yeah,
How
completely.
can I, yeah. And the interesting thing is the more you dip in, the more you practice, the more you um, allow yourself, give yourself permission to experience this depth and this stillness, the more you can connect with it very quickly
Yeah.
and actually profound experience even within a minute,
Mm.
perhaps.
I was
So,
always, I was always inspired by those Buddhist monks that walk in those incredibly busy streets, ringing their bell, completely silent. And the whole teaching is you in the chaos, you have to find the silence within. So I often go to a big shopping center and just walk down that passage on a busy day and try to get that silence. And I think that's more powerful than maybe sitting alone for the day, because
yeah,
if you can find it in the chaos, I'm sure it's way better than when it's peaceful, you know?
for sure, Michael. I mean, yeah, I mean, yes, you can be on the hilltop or in the sanctuary
Mm,
away from it, but our life is now calling for exactly that quality. And this is why I'm so interested in CEOs and
mm,
leaders that are within such a high pressured environment that if they don't build this capacity, they suffer and people underneath them suffer. And I know suffering is part of life, but I am really about, well, how can I just lessen that suffering a little, or just offer something, or help build a capacity in the other, that allows for this that you and I are talking about, this experience of stillness, the eye of the storm.
yeah,
That's a nice picture too.
yeah.
That nature
And suffering is also our point of view of how we see suffering is also different as we grow, I think. Because I mean,
yeah,
um, seeing
definitely.
death, understanding death now as when I was younger is completely different. For me
Mm,
now, there's no suffering in death. You know,
mm,
every beginning needs to have a beautiful ending. You know, so it's there's no more suffering in that, and
yeah.
I think that's why we probably do our work is to help people change and see that we don't need to suffer. We need to
Mm.
grow. We need to grow
Yes.
up and
Yes.
become present and understand and see life differently, right?
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, it's been so good chatting with you. Do you want to give us a pearl of wisdom to our listeners before we go?
Where we go. So, Michael, I think so. Thank you for the time. Um, the pearl of wisdom. Let me sit with this for a second. Um, the pearl of wisdom would be, how are you showing up?
Mm.
And who are you showing up for?
Mm.
Those are the two questions that I'd like to just leave resonating and resounding in the space. Yeah.
Love it. Yeah, I think we can just appreciate that. And it's been so good chatting with you. You've got so much to offer. Thank you for your work,
Great.
understanding a deep sense of joy, a way of being present, just coming from it from a very practical, clear thinking way. And if anyone wants to get in touch with you, I'll have all the details in the description below. They can definitely contact you. And if their if their leader needs to go to one of your retreats, yeah, maybe they should book them as well.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you for the time, Michael.
Yeah,
Really
it's been a
enjoyed it.
magical space. Awesome chatting with you. And
Thank
let's
you.
hope we do it again. Okay.
Yes, that would be awesome. Thank you, Michael. All the
Thank
best.
you. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. And join us again next time for another exciting guest on life-changing stories. Thank you for listening. Until next time, goodbye.